let's talk about the brands you love. The ones that promise us more than just a product. They promise a better world. But how do we know if that promise is the real deal or if it's just really clever marketing? That's what we're breaking down today. And let's be honest, it's a question we're all asking more and more. We don't just buy things anymore. We buy into the stories and the values a brand represents. So when that brand takes a big public stand on an issue we care about, we have to wonder, does the company behind the curtain actually live up to that promise? This idea from researcher Douglas Holt, wow, it just gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The problem isn't that brands have influence. It's that their shiny, polished image can basically act as a shield, hiding the less glamorous, real-world actions of the corporation behind them. And that right there is the central conflict we're digging into. So let's start with the why. Why has this become such a massive make-or-break issue for brands? What exactly changed in our relationship with them? Well, the entire game has been flipped on its head. We've gone from a world where brands were kind of like fashion magazines, dictating the trends, to a world where brands are more like a box of Legos. We, the consumers, use them as building blocks to construct and express our own unique identities. And think about it. If you're going to use a brand as a piece of your identity, it absolutely has to feel real. Authenticity isn't some bonus feature anymore. It's the price of entry. And for a brand to be seen as an authentic resource, the company behind it can't just talk the talk. It has to prove it's walking the walk. And this whole idea became very real very fast. The Nike scandal in the 90s was a huge moment. Activists exposed this massive gap between Nike's whole just do it image and the pretty harsh reality of its factory conditions. The public backlash was immense, and it forced the company to become way more transparent. But here's the wild part. After being forced to make those changes, Nike's reputation was ultimately strengthened. It was a serious wake-up call for the entire industry. Okay, so that's the why. Now let's get into the how. When a company decides to be ethical, what does that even mean? What kind of frameworks are they using to guide their decisions? Let's take a look at their moral compass. First, let's just get our terms straight, because ethics and corporate social responsibility, or CSR, get thrown around a lot. Think of it like this. Ethics are a company's internal moral code, what they believe is right or wrong. CSR is how they put those beliefs into action out in the real world. It's pretty much their social contract with the rest of us. When companies make these big ethical calls, they're usually leaning on one of two major philosophies. On one hand, you've got deontology, which is all about rules. It asks, is this action right according to our duties, no matter what the outcome is? On the other hand, there's utilitarianism, which is all about results. It asks, will this action create the greatest good for the greatest number of people? So the key thing to get here is the difference in focus. Are you following a universal moral checklist where some things are just flat out right or wrong? Or are you running a kind of ethical cost-benefit analysis, trying to maximize the overall good? This fundamental difference, it really shapes everything that follows. Okay, enough philosophy. How does this actually play out in the real world? Let's open up the CSR playbook and see the strategies companies are using. This chart is super helpful. It basically breaks down the four main approaches brands take. They generally fall into one of these boxes based on two key questions. First, is their social responsibility baked into their identity, or is it kind of just an add-on? And second, is it driven by their own internal values or by external market pressure? First up, you've got the CSR entrepreneurs. These are the companies that were literally built around a social mission from day one. For a company like Patagonia, environmental activism isn't some marketing campaign. It's, in their own words, the reason we're in business. The social cause and the business are completely intertwined. Then you have the CSR performers. These are often huge, established brands that integrate social responsibility because their stakeholders, customers, investors, employees, they all expect it. IKEA is a great example with all its sustainability initiatives. They are, in a sense, performing for their audience, in a good way. The vocal CSR converts are often a little late to the party. They adopt CSR in reaction to growing trends, and then you better believe they make sure everyone knows about it. Now, this approach can be a powerful force for good, but it also runs the risk of public skepticism if it feels more like an opportunistic marketing stunt than a real long-term commitment. And finally, we've got the quietly conscientious. These are organizations that are actively working to be better, to reduce their negative impacts, but they do it in the background. They don't build big ad campaigns around it. They just choose to get the work done without all the fanfare. Okay, so we've covered the why and the how. Now for the what. what do these strategies actually look like when they're out there competing for our attention and our dollars?
A huge one is green marketing. But what's so fascinating is that it's built on this paradox. Marketing's goal is to get us to consume more, while sustainability's goal is often to get us to consume less. The real challenge for these brands is to somehow navigate that conflict, to sell us on being green without just selling us more stuff.
And here's a tactic I'd guarantee you've seen everywhere: cause-related marketing. You know the drill. Buy this coffee and we'll plant a tree. It's an incredibly popular way to link a simple, everyday purchase to some bigger purpose. On the surface, it really does seem like a perfect win-win-win. The brand makes sales, the nonprofit gets much-needed funding, and we, the consumer, get a product and that kind of warm glow feeling from contributing. It's a simple, powerful connection between commerce and charity. But it's not quite that simple. Critics point out some pretty significant downsides. Does it encourage companies to drop their direct, no-strings-attached donations in favor of these slick marketing programs? And maybe more importantly, does it teach us that our duty to help others can be fulfilled just by swiping a credit card? It raises this big question of whether this painless giving is true charity or something else entirely. So here's the takeaway. The next time you see a brand championing a cause, you can look deeper. You can ask, is this company built on this cause, or are they a late convert? Are they following a strict set of rules, or are they just aiming for a good outcome? Asking these kinds of questions helps you cut through all the noise, distinguish commitment from advertising, and decide for yourself, is this real change, or is it just really good marketing?